Hello everybody, and once again I want to welcome you guys back to the shop. As you can see behind me, I've got a couple engines sitting here, and today I think what we're going to end up doing is we're going to swap these things around, and I'm going to basically start this engine up. We're going to get to listen to this thing run. So anyway, stick around and I'll tell you a little bit more about what we've got with these engines, and we'll put this thing on the run stand and we'll see if we can make this thing run. Okay, before I get too carried away, I want to once again, as I always do, I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you guys for following the channel. And anyway, I'm going to jump into it. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we got here. So if you guys will remember, this is a 383. I've got a couple of build episodes on the channel. This was the 383 that I did a couple of build series, and then I did a couple of videos where I actually put this thing on this run stand. Had a heck of a time getting this thing to run. But anyway, this is a very healthy sounding 383. It needs to come off the stand. I've got a few plans, I think, for this thing, and we'll discuss that later on down the line. But this engine is a 355 that I built a couple of years back. We ended up picking up this car for the red 69 Camaro. We were going to run this small block. This is basically, I think it's a 77-ish engine block, and we were going to run this in that 69 Camaro. Well, as you guys are fully aware, maybe not, the 69 has a totally different engine that's going to go in it. So this engine, another guy ended up purchasing this. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this engine on the run stand. I know this thing runs. I've got an actual run video of this thing back in my Facebook days, but we're going to put this thing on the run stand, get it fired up, and get everything kind of tuned in. And then basically on this thing, we're going to change the intake and the carburetor to a better suited setup for what the guy's going to run in his OBS truck. So anyway, stick around. We're going to do this swap-a-roo, and I'll talk a little bit about these things a little bit more as we go. So once again, I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and I'm going to get the cherry pick and start unbolting. Okay, I was able to get these things swapped over. Got the 383 off the run stand and got this little 355 bolted up here. So I want to give just a little bit of history because this engine and I, to be honest, we go way back. In fact, this was, I think I pulled it out of a 77 Chevelle at least 30 years ago. I think it was probably late 80s, early 90s. I pulled this thing out and actually built this thing for my Blue Nova, which if you guys look on some of my playlists, there is a car out there. It's called Old Blue that got a lot of history with that car. But anyway, I built that engine. I built this engine, good grief, well over 25 years ago. And whenever I started doing the restoration on my Nova, this engine, I pulled it out and it sat in the shop floor for quite some time. Years later, I ended up building a little bit better engine. This engine, I was still trying to put this engine in my Nova. I was doing a bunch of modifications for it, and I ruined the cam in it basically. So I ended up building a 4-bolt main 383 that's in the car now. And this engine, I went completely back through this thing. Funny story, I sold this engine to a buddy of mine, and he was gonna put it in a little El Camino. Long story short, he ended up pulling it back out and I ended up buying it back for my customer, and we were gonna run this thing in a 69 Camaro. There's really nothing fancy about this thing other than it's just a good solid engine. It's got cast pistons, it's been bored, it's got new rings, rod main bearings, oil pump. And I ran this thing, I bought this thing's probably sitting in my shop for, I don't know, the past 4.5 years, I guess. And I ran it back then, and so now we're going to, I'm gonna hook up all the peripheral equipment, such as the headers, the starter. I'm not gonna put the cooling system together, just given the fact that I'm not gonna run this very long, and then I'm gonna end up pulling the intake and carburetor on it and bolting the right stuff to it. So anyway, I'm gonna finish wrapping this thing up, get it all ready to start, and we'll see if we can build a fire in this thing, so they say. Okay, I think I've got everything bolted on for now. Not real sure why I didn't put the starter on before I put that header on over there, but anyway, I've got everything bolted up. I'm gonna spin this thing around, spin it over a few times and try to get some of the oil pressure to prime up. If not, I'll pull the distributor out, put my priming tool in here, and get the oil pressure built up before I go much farther. But also I have to, I've got to dig up a set of spark plugs. I'm not real sure where I've put the spark plugs for this thing, but I've got to do that, and then I'll pull number 1 piston up, get the plug wires and the plugs in it, and we'll see if we can make this thing run. So, like I said, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the cooling system because I'm not going to let this thing run very long, but once I do verify that everything kind of sounds good, then we're going to pull the intake and everything off, and we're going to replace that while it's on the stand. So anyway, we're going to do that, and I'll be back in just a little bit. Okay, I've got everything hooked up this time. It was getting a little bit late in the evening yesterday. I had to run to town and actually pick up a set of spark plugs, so today's a new day. I've got the plugs in it, the wires are on it. This engine does have a mechanical fuel pump, so I've just put a pickup tube down into this gas jug that you see. So, like I said, gonna try to start this thing for the first time. I started this thing, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, and it ran great. So we're gonna see if it'll start again, hopefully no knocks. And once we get it running, then I'll tear it down and we'll see if we can put the right intake and carburetor on it. So here goes nothing. Flywheel sounds horrible. Okay, I ended up having to just change out that starter. That thing was, for some reason, it did not want to mate up to this flywheel. It was a mini starter, so I think it sounds better, so we'll try it again. Okay, take 4 or 5 or whatever, but I think the fuel pump set long enough that the diaphragm in it probably dried up, so I went ahead and hooked up the electric. So we'll try this one more time. Get some fuel, there it is. Okay, that didn't sound too bad. So it held about 70 pounds of oil pressure. So I think I'll end up, that's about all I needed to hear. So I'll reposition the camera, and I think I'm gonna end up pulling the top end off of this, or the intake and the carburetor, and we'll get it ready for the intake and the carburetor that he's gonna be running. So anyway, I'll set the camera up and I'll see you in a bit. Now that I got the old intake, well, it wasn't old, but anyway, now that I got the intake off and the carburetor, basically what that was, the intake was a single plane intake. It was a Wyand air gap intake. And additionally, the carburetor was a 650 brawler, but it was also a double pump configuration. So they would work great with this engine. However, what we're looking at on this is a little bit better low end torque. So what we've done is I've got an Edelbrock Performer intake, which is a dual plane, and a 600 Holley, which is a vacuum secondary electric choke. So now that I've got that stuff off, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get the new intake and carburetor assembly bolted in, get the distributor back in it, get it somewhat timed, then we're gonna fire it up, and then basically I'm gonna try to do a preliminary tune on it so it's pretty close, so whenever the customer picks it up, he'll be able to just drop it into his truck and go from there. But real quick, I kind of show you this engine. If I can get this camera to pan in here just a little bit, but you can see down in that valley how clean this engine actually is. And like I said, I put this thing together a few years back, and it was straight out of the machine shop. It's basically just been sitting in the shop. So anyway, I'm going to get all the new stuff bolted on here. Also got to get an alternator set up so I can run the water pump, so we do have a cooling system this go around. I'm going to put some turbo mufflers on it so it'll be a little bit quieter, so we can kind of run through the tuning process a little bit better. So anyway, I'm going to get set up and I'll just see you in just a little bit. Okay, I've got everything pretty much hooked up. Went ahead and put the alternator on it. Like it's not, I could care less whether your alternator works. Just basically need to spin the water pump. I've got water in the system. Got the mufflers bolted on, and I went ahead and I popped this thing off just to kind of get the idle set to make sure it was going to work. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plug the timing light into it, and I'm going to set the initial timing at about 12 degrees. And once I'm done with that, then hopefully we can dial it in to where it's about, I don't know, 28 to 30, somewhere in that neighborhood, 28 to 30 total timing. So anyway, it should start right up. Should. timing set. So next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get set up and we'll adjust the carburetor just a little bit. And once that's done, I think we're gonna pull it back off the stand. I'm gonna get it crated and we're gonna deliver it. See you in a bit. Now that the timing is taken care of, it's time to focus on the carburetor. So if you have never tuned a carburetor before, you're gonna need one of these tools right here. So this is the Whistle tuning system by Triumph. And this is some very old technology. So if you aren't lucky enough to have one of these, then you're probably gonna have to go back in time and figure out how to get one of these. But anyway, I'll grab the camera and I'm gonna I'll bring this the camera in here and I'll show you exactly how this thing works, because it's almost like magic. Okay, like I said, this is the Whistle tuning system by Triumph, and as you can see, it's pretty old school. You have to have this transistor interface. If not, this is the brains of the operation. This right here is what makes it happen. So basically, this is a very manual system. This is your data log scroll, and as you're data logging, this scroll is going to come across here. Notice we got the timing light system hooked up, and once the data log reaches the end, of course, you got to take it back and scroll up just a little bit to continue data logging. But a few features of this thing here, it's very manual. So if you need less fuel, you hit this minus, and then you have to type in gas, G-A-S. Keys are a little sticky, so may have to put some penetrating oil on that. But anyway, same way with timing. If you need less timing, you hit the negative, and then you just type out timing. And then if you need more, they didn't give you a plus sign, but they gave you this arrow up. So at the end of the day, be very, very careful. Do not hit this Whistle toets. Don't know how to pronounce that, but do not hit that, because that will wipe your brain out. That will completely delete anything that you've done to this point. So anyhow, we come off of the data logging scroll, and it basically comes down and it interfaces into this ballast resistor. And then we come off this ballast resistor, and it goes into the brain right here. Now notice, this has got a G on it. This stands for gas, okay? So what we're gonna do, notice we got three more letters here. So this is your base gas, this is driving gas, and this is cruising gas. And if you see there's screws in here, and you screw that screw down and back the next one out whenever you want to adjust. So we're going to start with our base gas. Then we come off of the transistor module, and you've got an interface cable right here. Pay very close attention to this, because notice it's red and black. This is also, it's polarity sensitive. So basically, let me get around here, and this is going to interface on your coil. Just put it right there, right there. It's not really going to matter. And then you're going to start the tuning process right there, boys and girls. That's some old school technology, and like I said, I'm very lucky to have that here at the shop. So since I've tuned some of these things, you also have to have white New Balance. And anyway, but if you get confused, then you can always just throw this in the trash and use this screwdriver. Okay, hopefully that was educational, and hopefully you learned something. So I think, for the most part, I've got this engine pretty well dialed in, and we're going to move the Whistle tuner. Move the Whistle tuner out of the way. Get that out of the way here. So anyway, I've got this thing dialed in pretty good. The owner he swung by, and I was able to start it up and let him listen to it. He's very super excited about it. So I think for the next part, I'm going to basically throw the camera on. I'm going to time lapse, put maybe some more music on, and I'm going to pull this thing off the stand, get it on an engine cradle, and load it in the back of my truck. And I think I'm going to deliver it this afternoon. So as I always tell you guys, hey, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate the people that follow my channel, and I hope you guys have enjoyed this as much as I have, even putting up with the Whistle tuner. So anyway, I'm gonna close it, and as I always tell you, I look to see you on the next one, and thanks for watching. We'll see you later. Bye.